There's a limit to how big we can go with the large language models. They fundamentally have a limit to the size of the input we can give them, so how big of a prompt we can give them or how long our conversation can be and they can still remember it. And there's just a limitation on how much output they can generate at once. Now, it's inevitable that these language models are going to keep getting bigger and bigger, and we're going to be able to give them more and more input and get more and more output from them. But more than likely, everybody is going to face some limitation on how big we can go. Now, the way that we work around that is we're typically generating pieces. Like we generate a piece of the solution, then we take it. So you can imagine if you're trying to generate a book, you can't just tell ChatGPT at this point, go and generate a book for me. It's not going to do it. It's going to tell you, well, I have to stop my input at some point. And similarly, you can't just give it 50,000 pages at this point and dump it into ChatGPT and ask it to give you an answer, or 100,000 pages or 1,000,000 pages. There's always going to be a limit, probably, on the amount of information. So we need a way to work with it in smaller pieces, but still be able to put all the pieces back together. So one of the ways that we can do that is by building an outline of what we're trying to put together. And we can build the outline out, we can build it to the level of granularity that we want, and then we can start filling in the pieces once we've gotten enough detail into our outline. And then we can go and generate individual pieces, and we can know where they all fit together. So this is an effective way of using it to generate the pieces. Now, this is basically putting a plan together. This same approach works for all kinds of things. It could be software, anywhere where we can go and sort of have this outline-like structure, and then if we generate something that fits sort of the outline or the plan at that point, then we can go and work with it. Now we're going to look at a specific pattern that can help us generate the outlines and work with them. This is called the outline expansion pattern. And so the idea is we want to make it really easy to generate outlines and continue to expand them down to the level of granularity that we need in order to build the individual pieces and then be able to put them together. Now, one of the reasons that outlines are a really helpful tool when we're building bigger bodies of work with a tool like ChatGPT is that an outline, we can always take parts of the outline and copy and paste or reintroduce them into the prompt to give the large language model context about what we want. So with ChatGPT, for example, we can generate an outline and then we can copy and paste a portion of the outline into our prompt and say, within this context, here's where you are in the outline. Now fill in the content for this and don't repeat anything that would have come before in the outline. And in fact, you can refer to the other parts of the outline wherever you're going to talk about a topic that was discussed previously. Or maybe we want to have forward references where we can provide at the high level outline and say, wherever you are going to need to talk about a topic that's going to be discussed later, you can provide a forward reference to where it is in the outline. You can do similar types of things with software or other sort of whatever the bigger thing is that you're building. Now, this works well when we have a structure that's amenable to sort of this outline-based plan. Now, sometimes we have plans or structures or designs where everything crosses over and you can't easily do this. It doesn't work to express it as an outline and express the plan, and in those cases, it just doesn't work. But many problems we can sort of build out in a sort of outline-like fashion, and then we can use cutting and pasting from the outline to provide the appropriate context. So building outlines can be a really powerful thing for us. So we're going to look at and build with the outline expansion pattern. So here's what we say. We're going to say act as an outline expander. And notice I'm starting to introduce multiple patterns here. I'm basically introducing the persona pattern. Generate a bullet point outline based on the input that I give you, and then ask me for the bullet point you should expand on. So we're telling it you're going to generate the outline, and then you're going to expand on anything that I ask you to expand on. Create a new outline for the bullet point that I select. At the end, ask me for what bullet point to expand next. So notice I'm using the tail generation pattern as well, and then I'm using the ask for input pattern. So I'm putting a lot of things together into this prompt. And I say, ask me for what to outline. And so what we see is it says, sure, I'd be happy to help you with that. So I say, let's write an outline for writing effective prompts for ChatGPT. And so what we see is that ChatGPT generates this outline, and it's an interesting outline: introduction to ChatGPT, understanding the importance of prompts, tips for writing effective prompts, yada, yada, yada. So a lot of good things there. And then I decide, okay, let's go and expand on 3 from the outline. So if we look back here, 3 was tips for writing effective prompts. I thought, let's go ahead and expand the outline there and explore this a little more. And so then it picks up from 3 and it expands on tips for writing effective prompts and gives us a new outline. So we built, in using this pattern, we can rapidly fill in an outline, and probably there are going to be tools to support us in this very soon, or plugins to support us in this very soon, to where we don't have to remember all the pieces of the outline. With this, I would probably just manually have a document where, as it was generating the pieces, I would go and look and say, okay, here's the 3. I'll paste 3 in its expansion now, and you can easily fit the parts together. This is one of the nice things about the outline approach, is that it's really obvious how all the pieces fit together. I know that 3.1 goes underneath 3, so it's sort of self-describing in terms of the assembly. So if I generated a piece of an outline here, I've expanded 3, I know exactly where that goes, how it fits together in the overall whole. Then I go and say, well, you know, this idea of experimenting with different prompt styles, that looks interesting. So maybe I should go and expand that further in the outline. And so I basically say 3.2, and now it goes and expands the outline around 3.2. So you see how we've got a simple pattern, and we now can go and rapidly create an outline and keep expanding it to the level of detail. And because of it's using this outline structure, it's really easy to fit all of the individual pieces back together. And as long as we have limitations on how much input, how big of a prompt we can give, and how much output we can get at once, we're always going to be looking for ways to generate things in pieces and know how they fit together. So we want the pieces to be really obvious on how to assemble them, and we always want to make sure that we have a clear structure or set of guidelines for each individual piece so that we can assemble them. So you can imagine if this part of the outline depends on knowledge of what was covered in a different part of the outline, then we would need to make sure that that was introduced into the prompt. So we just said 3.2, but if we had an idea that maybe the conversation had gotten so long that what was in item 1 had been forgotten, we might want to go and just cut and paste the outline underneath 1 back into the prompt and then say expand 3.2, because we know 3.2 was just previously generated, but that would help give it the knowledge of what had come before and make sure that what it put into 3.2 was consistent with what had been done earlier in the overall structure. Similarly, if it needed to make sure that 3.2 was cohesive with what's going to come later, we would want to put in those pieces. So one of the things we have to think about is, even if this outline style, when we do this, it will work, but we always have to think about, does it still have the context to make sure the individual pieces are cohesive, even if they fit into the outline at this point? We want to make sure it doesn't do something that, breaks something somewhere else. And this is a problem, a fundamental challenge that we're always working with in prompt engineering when we're building from pieces. How do we build the pieces so that they're standalone, self-contained, but can be assembled into the overall whole? And so we see this again, we just expand 3.5, which was setting the tone and style. And we get this very rapid expansion and creation of a sophisticated outline now that we can use to write text for a bigger project, to be able to try to write software. There's all kinds of sort of analogies or analogs to the outline, the sort of the master structure, where we start with a certain level of detail, then we pick some piece of it and we expand the level of detail. And then we may pick a piece of that and we may expand the detail. And then we may move back up to another bullet point in the outline and expand the level of detail. And so we can be moving up and down in the outline. We can be going up to the top level, or we can be going down to the really detailed things, and we can expand wherever we want and sort of keep a map of the overall picture that we can use to build individual pieces and make sure that we can assemble them. But also, as we build pieces, that we can make sure that ChatGPT has the relevant information, the sections of the outline, for example, in the prompt that it needs in order to reason about or generate whatever it's going to produce next.